Ancient Nalanda represented what? Ancient Nalanda represented Dharma, Dhamma, or so to say, knowledge and wisdom, because with knowledge comes wisdom. Unlike today, where knowledge need not lead to wisdom, and wisdom leads to peaceful coexistence, harmony, greater truth, and greater truth definitely has a larger meaning to life, and that larger meaning to life is twofold. One is we are not there forever. We have a limited time on this planet, and this planet is forever for very many generations. So the moment this particular thought sinks in, and one is so overwhelmed by seeing the ancient ruins where traditions of knowledge continued, and knowledge, not just philosophical knowledge, religious knowledge so to say, but they were teaching Arthashastra to Atharved, to astronomy, to logic, to Sanskrit, Buddhism, to Jainism. I believe 14 years was a time which Bhagwan Mahavir spent there. And this shows the ancient tradition and Indic value system. Why I am insisting on this? While each one followed their respective paths, each one followed their respective thoughts, each one was trying to improve upon the existing knowledge of that time and making the human species better. And bettering the human species, if we go back to this very thought, the truth of Dhamma conference will bring focus to the post-COVID world. The people who believe this virus came from wherever, was that part of a dharma, or when humanity was struggling to deal with the virus, was sitting on vaccines part of the dharma, or making vaccines and contributing to the well-being of all and not being self-centered and self-centric is part of the dharma. And when we discuss dharma, I must say the dharma, so far as, and I off-quote two examples from my limited understanding, and that limited understanding is that dharma, like Hinduism, was never permanent. Nobody ever said that I am the most learned man on this planet or most learned woman on this planet, and after me there can be no improvement. That's the first admission, that we are not the supreme beings. We are limited beings, limited by our thoughts, limited by our actions, limited by our wisdom, limited by all the exposures that we have. But to be expansive, to be inclusive, to be forever, the knowledge is forever, and for that knowledge to be forever, there is always going to be someone better than you to improve upon where you've left the foundation. So we are all part of foundation laying ceremony for futures to come, both physically and metamorphically. And I am saying this because the institution we are representing today, Nalanda, the ancient Nalanda is the symbol of that learning. We have built on that learning. We are representative in nature so that future generations can make it better and better and better for humanity to reach the ultimate truth. And what is the ultimate truth? To the limited extent that I understand, the ultimate truth must have three ingredients: Sat, Chit and Anand. So Sat is the truth, Chit is consciousness, and Anand is the blissfulness. So for any human existence to be truthful, we need to have a moral and ethical conduct which should be above greed, which should be above self-service, which should be for totality of human and other lives. As Buddha said, that this planet is not just for humans. We have started saying that now. Now we are also saying the same thing. But Buddha said a few thousand BC, and same thing is coming around. So truth is forever. It may have different manifestation. So everyone is realizing the truth that if we think humans are going to be the ones who are going to exploit the planet, and everything is meant for exploitation, and human beings are the supreme most being, then the answer is sorry, you're not the supreme most being. A small virus had told you the truth that you are not indestructible, but viruses are forever. Anyone who understands science would know that virus is the only being which can be alive and dead at the same time. So the moment it has a host cell, it is alive. The moment it is outside the host cell, it is as good as a speck of dust. So the transition from living to dead, we all will become carbon, hydrogen, methane and whatever else. Similarly, all the viruses which are non-living outside a human body gain the life inside a host cell. So this transition, if we understand, and if we understand that we are as much part of the nature as nature is part of us, we will stop destroying the planet. And this planet, as we say, our time is limited by our own action, limited by the human life cycle, and limited sometimes by our own deeds. All the pollutants that we consume on daily basis, we limit our own time on this planet. So for sustainability, coexistence of all living creatures is so very important. So I'm taking another detour in my thought, and my detour is that so many thousand years ago, when Bhagwan Buddha was there, Bhagwan Mahavir was there, I think they gave us the lessons in sustainability. And they were against violence, they were for compassion, they were for kindness. And as we say, the Dharma Chakra, whenever Yadai Dharmasya Galani Bhavti Bharata, we all know that shlok from Gita, that whenever adharma will increase, whenever people are going to be destructive, there will be some godly powers which will come together and come in some form to bring humans on the right path. And I feel that transition in today's time, I'm seeing that transition happening. I'm seeing the good powers are coming together, and goodness is able to identify whatever is wrong with the planet, whatever is wrong with the human consumption, whatever is wrong with human existence, how greed has taken better of us, how people need to control their consumption patterns to make this planet and earth sustainable. And those thoughts, that churning is already happening. And for that churning to happen, there would be no better place than Nalanda. Because this place, by the name itself, shows a continuous knowledge tradition, continuous tradition of wisdom, continuous tradition of resilience, that even when you get burned down, you don't end. You restart your life and bring your life together and come back and fight back together. This is what Nalanda is all about. And this is what post-COVID world has to learn. Post-COVID world has to learn that life is not just about economy. And I can go back 2 years when first lockdown happened in March, 12th of March if I'm not mistaken. And 12th of March, everyone is still discussing that lockdown will lead to bad economy, people will die of hunger, people will die of starvation. And the Prime Minister came, Jaan hai to jahan hai. One line, very simple. So wisdom and knowledge, of course, we can go on articulating in our own formats, in our own methods. But knowledge and wisdom is also communicated in the simplest form. And that simplest communication is what Bhagwan Buddha stood for. Simple. Right path. That's it. Right path will lead to everything else. right tradition, right effort, right thought. And with that thought process, very simple principles. You don't have, people can go on commenting, enunciating. So simply, the Prime Minister, what does he say? Jaan hai to jahan hai, one line message, everyone understood, bhaiya pehle jaan bachao. Paise waise aa jayenge. That is the message. So, we all locked ourselves down. I mean, I didn't, but most of us did. And when we locked down, when we as country and as society locked down, we showed the world how important lockdown was. Because no matter how good your medical systems were, they were never good enough for 30-40% of the population to land in hospitals. They can never be good enough. No matter how good your doctors are, but your doctors will never be adequate if 50% of your population needs you. No matter how much money you can spend, it will never be good enough when people go on overdrive to buy things. And we saw people were fighting over toilet papers. And this is just an indication of how we took a wrong path and the correction had to happen. And the correction is that after almost 2 years, 19-20 months, everyone has come to realize that enough of hurt we have caused to dharma, and dharma means not necessarily in the religious sense of the word, but dharma means the right conduct. We've caused harm. And we have caused harm to the planet, we've caused harm to the families, we've caused harm to everyone around us. Time to rebuild. And time to rebuild because we got enough time at home. And we realized that some relationships are more important than anything else in the world. And we at times don't give enough thought to that. We are all in a rat race. So, self-realization. And from that self-realization to the realization, how much do we need anyways? How much food can we eat? Everyone's on intermittent diet, which Bhagwan Mahavir taught us few thousand years ago. Fasting, old traditions, old Hindu traditions, Indic, and I can use the word Indic traditions because all of us, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Ajivikas, everyone used fasting. Fasting is a way of cleansing yourself. And cleansing yourself becomes so important that ultimately you really don't need a lot of food. And ultimately you really don't need a lot of variety of food because it's easy to eat same thing every morning and to know your menu beforehand. It makes life simple. How much of things can we buy? Because we lived without shops. We learned we really don't need too many clothes. We really don't need too many things. We can do without whatever we have can sustain us for the life we have. And there is enough to give away to others who probably need it more than us. And I think this is what ultimately our dharmic traditions. Isn't this what our dharma teaches in different ways? Each one of us would have felt that this is what our dharma actually teaches, and this is what is Dhamma tradition. So post-COVID world needed a new arrangement of thoughts, which will take us forward and decide what we do with this century and how humanity is going to survive in coexistence, in harmony with everything else around. And with everything else around is only possible when we learn to respect others other than us. Both in terms of human beings and also in terms of trees, plants, animals, everyone needs to be respected, because as long as that life is, the sustainability principle will work no matter how many COP 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 may happen. till the time we change the thought process, nothing really will change. And there is a saying, na ratnam vishyati mrigayati tat, which means no diamond is seeking, diamond is sought. And diamond is not necessarily the ratan as we all understand, the diamond or the precious gem, but the precious gem in the form of thought and knowledge. I think it's the right time that India will be sought, because we are the successors of great thought, tradition and heritage, and we need to build upon that the way Nalanda built itself multiple times, because the foundation is always there. The foundation was always there, so it could keep on rebuilding. So foundation exists within us, and during COVID we have shown the world the capacity that India has. And the capacity that India has is not necessarily just the government. Government is also representative of people. It's the capacity of the people. It's the capacity of 130 crore people. And that capacity we saw, at least I as a politician can say, I saw people contribute, go out of the way to help others. I saw people helping each other who were in distress. I saw people contributing by running food shops, ration shops. You just name it and it all came. It all came not necessarily because I represent Delhi. And in Delhi, I knew the fair price shops were non-functional. But people on the street were helping each other. And people were giving food to everyone else. There were langars, there were ration, there were distribution of food. Common people just helping each other. And is this not what Dharma teaches? That when somebody is in distress, go forward and help the others. And my friend Sunaina ji, if I may refer her to my friend, Honorable Sunaina ji, talked about culture ministry. And I was just thinking, I say, ultimately what is culture? We all represent culture, we all represent Indianness, and that is our culture. But the manner in which one has to understand the culture is Sanskriti. Sanskriti to Shrishti, because the earth is Dhara, Shrishti. On that, to Prakriti. The three combinations together is what the culture theme is all about. That ultimately, if we have to exist on this earth planet, whatever we build around has to be in tune with the Prakritic principles, natural principles, principles of nature, sustainability and all. And that is how my culture, our culture, has sustained itself for thousands of years. And that is the connection we as Indians have maintained for thousands of years. When you travel outside the country and you see people with great respect, the timelines, the time zones start from Middle Ages, what we call Middle Ages, which is close to the modern time frame, 100, 200 years. So 300, 400, when they say 300, 400, 500-year-old, this is it. And I'm like, okay, this is still nascent for me, because my time zone starts for a few centuries before Christ was there. That is how our thinking goes on. And when I visited Nalanda, I kept asking this question. I say, the burnt brick structures that time, we were not using stones. Are we using the burnt brick structures? So some very learned people were around me, and they gave some gyan to me. And they said, ma'am, burnt brick structures during Harappan period were used for drainage, because they understood that for drainage you needed waterproof structures, and the burnt brick offered that. But other structures were all clay structures. But because this was a watershed area, this watershed area needed permanent waterproofing. So we used burnt brick structures all over. And we also used stone pillars. I said, but from where do you get the stone? There is no granite around in this region. They said, no, Chota Nagpur did have some granite, and from there the pillars would have been cast and they would have been brought. And then I saw Shiva temple, a Parvati temple, and a Murti of Tara, which shows itself that there was always coexistence of different thoughts at all the time. This is what India has been. And I laughingly today many a times say this. I say, there's a saying, there's a ayat in Quran which says the Christians of the world will get divided into 67 subsects, and the Jews of the world will get divided into 67 subsects, and Christians of the world will get divided into 69, 70 subsects, and you, my followers for the Islam, will get divided into 72 subsects. And I will just stand up and say, okay, tell me one country which has all the 72 subsects. Islamic country. Tell me one Islamic country which has all the subsects. None. Tell me one Christian country which has all the Christian subsects. None. Jews, of course, have found themselves together, and most of them in one country. But any other country outside that country, I think India represents that country where all these subsects exist, and people like us who worship 33,000 crore Devi Devta are also there. That is the strength of India. This is how diverse we are, and this is how the lesson in coexistence also we can give to the world. And this coexistence comes because there is a certain amount of acceptance, and that acceptance comes from being humble. I am not supreme. I do not know everything. I will never know everything. Everybody else will have their own respective worldview. Everybody else has a right to coexist. While we are argumentative Indian, we can go on debating. We are happy to debate, no problem. And it is in that context I want to bring back the focus on the principles which Buddhism gave us. Simplification of the existence of thought at that time, and simplification so that the common people could just do what is right. Samdhiti. And Samdhiti is the right thought, and from right thought go to the right conduct, and right conduct would mean samvayam, and I think that is where we all need to transition ourselves in the post-COVID world. And this Dharma Dhammo conference will definitely be coming up with the proper papers and thought processes, but people like me, less learned in thought, will definitely simplify things and say, do the right things. And how do you do the right things will depend on the circumstances you're in. Right thing cannot be a constant. Right thing will vary. So while non-violence is the rule of law, violence to prevent dharma is also right. And it is in that context that we have to build ourselves. And I usually give example that transition. So in our thought, we worship Meera and we worship Sita. We worship Hiranyakaship's son, Prahlad, and we worship Ram. Now look at the transitions and juxtapose each other. So we worship Sita because she was a very obedient wife who would follow her husband wherever and be with him in bad times, not necessarily in good times. And we worship Meera, who did not stand by her husband. That is Indian thought. because that was the right thing to do, to be on the right side. It is not the obedience to black law. Similarly, we worship Ram. For what? What characteristic we worship Ram for? Maryada Purushottam, who was always obedient to his father's word. We worship Ram. Beta hu to Ram jaisa. Father's word was the most supreme. But we also worship Prahlad, who did not stand by his father. So what is right will be determined by the circumstances you're in. So dharma is non-changeable, whereas obedience to a thought is transient. And this is how we distinguish our philosophy and transition of thought. And that is where fluidity in thought process comes, and that fluidity will determine what is right, what is wrong. And that fluidity is the essence of our existence. The right path, the right conduct, the right knowledge, the truth will be determinative of the fact that the truth has to lead to right chit, the sat has to go to chit, the consciousness of all the soup you're in, surroundings you're in, and then it has to be blissful existence of accepting everything and doing the right thing. As long as you do the right thing, even if you lose money, you lose health, you lose peace, you don't mind it, because you know you've done the right thing. You were on the right side. And that is what dharma is all about. At the end, I want to say two things and end my today's address. Yano bhadra kritvo yantu vishwaha. Let the good thoughts come to me from all over the world. And I want let the good people come to Nalanda from all over the world. And because only when good people congregate, strengthen the thought process, strengthen each other, stand by each other, will we be able to face the world, the wrong people, the wrong thoughts, the wrong desires, the wrong conduct. So good people also need to be on the side of each other. And until and unless that happens, we will not be able to be victorious on the bad elements. And this battle of, and the victory I should say, good always prevails, the truth always prevails, goodness is always victorious, because there comes a time when adharma happens so much that the dharma takes over, and there is a transition, and that transition is what we are going through. As I can see, I can just see it happening around me. And at the end, again I'm quoting Bhagwan Buddha's words, and which says, I've written APJ Kalam, but I'll mention it later. Atma Deepo Bhav, that you be the light, you be the enlightened, you be on the right track, everything else will congregate and everything else will follow. And to end APJ Kalam's word,